Hey everyone, Cecil here. I just wanted to let you know what happened to make this video late. A couple nights ago, my computer crashed and it erased everything, and I mean everything. By the time the techs were able to get to it, the only thing they could do was wipe it completely clean, and I got back a blank laptop. Basically, I just cobbled together this quick video from a really old sketch and some audio that I could salvage from a flash drive. I'm going to start rebuilding my library of drawings and paintings and tattoos for everyone. And I thank everybody for understanding and hanging in there and listening to what I was able to make for you. I hope you enjoyed anyways. Thanks again. Hit that like button.
So I'm not an artist, and I know that I've heard multiple times that, you know, someone's a real artist. They can create these worlds from their brain. They don't need reference. And I guess I never really thought much of it. But I'm just a guy. So you being an actual trained artist, can you, I mean, I get you can only talk for yourself, but can you make art well without reference materials?
No, I can't. I will start out with like a different style to get my basic idea down, but I do not have the mental library to create anything realistic looking. And especially with I'm doing these like fantastical creatures, right? They're just really crazy, and you have to sell them as real unless you're trying to do a more cartoony style or something like that. That's
Right.
cutesy. And I'm not. I'm trying to create these weird, anthropomorphic, weird, whatever creatures, and I want you to believe that there's a humanity to them, that there's something tangible to them. And I just don't believe you can create a realistic style with. I mean, how do you develop a mental library like that? Now, I've seen stuff that's rendered out, but I think there's a big difference between rendering something out, which a lot of people will call realistic, and making something look realistic.
Sure. But if you're using reference anyway, I mean, should people bother studying like anatomy and planes and light and structure?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I try to tell it to people, because you get asked that a lot, I don't see why I need to even study anatomy or do life drawing if I'm, just gonna work from photographs.
Because internet.
Yeah, because the thing with a photograph is you're taking a three-dimensional image and compressing it to a two-dimensional surface, so you're losing a lot of information. So we can all look at something, and let's use a face for example. I can look at you right now and see where the shadow's casting over your orbital socket, and everybody can look at that and they can draw that shadow. But one, if you don't know the anatomy that's causing that shadow, you may not design the shape well. You don't know the insertion points of the muscles that connect to it. You don't understand what direction that plane is facing for sure, because sometimes through different types of lights and artificial lights, your values can get a little muddied up, especially when you're looking at a photograph or even print quality or, screen, whatever. And so maybe you're looking at a plane and you misinterpret it as a side-facing plane when it should be a front-facing plane, right? So if you know the anatomy and you understand the planes and you know the forms and the structure that relates to that, then what happens is you can take the missing information from that reference and make it better. And when you get good enough at understanding that part of it, then you can start to design based off the knowledge you have. And that's where art really starts to take a step up, is when you're looking at that information and you understand the stuff behind that information so well that you can design it and make it become something that can be far greater than anything that was ever in a photograph. And so you only get that if you study anatomy, do life drawing. Because the thing with life drawing is you're now interpreting everything you see from a 3-dimension. It's a living, breathing, moving model. They're getting up, they're getting down, they're moving positions slightly. So you really start to develop an eye that you can only get from drawing from life, because you're not working off a compressed image. If you have to work off a photograph, then you have to work off a photograph. But every town pretty much has some sort of life drawing, and I really, really think that if you want to see your skills as an artist progress, you have to draw from life. The reason is because you have to know the rules before you can bend the rules.
Right. So why do artists get so weird then when you start talking about using reference? Because it seems like people sort of start to clam up a little bit when you talk about using references in art?
I think there's a stigma behind it, and the stigma doesn't make any sense to me. But I used to fall into that until I got around great artists and seeing that they all use reference. I think to the general public, when you're talking to them and they find out that you use reference, all of a sudden you're less of an artist. But if you go back and you look at the guys that are considered the greatest of all time, you look at, Boogaroo and Sargent and Rockwell and Frazetta and all these guys that all worked from reference. And it's like, well, if these guys are considered the greats, then why am I less of an artist if I work from reference?
All right. So we're getting somewhere there. So great artists are gonna, they will continue to use reference. So what's then? Maybe there's a different way of thinking about reference. What's the right way of thinking about using references then?
Well, my phrase that I tell a lot of people when they want guidance on it from me is always make sure that your reference works for you. You don't work for your reference. If you're beholding to the reference and you're limited by what the reference provides you, then you don't have a strong enough foundation in art, I don't believe.
So just because I always feel the need to summarize, it kind of sounds like your general philosophy is, well, obviously that reference is a necessity. So everyone just needs to kind of get a little bit more honest about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And instead of treating your reference like a dirty little secret that we don't talk about, that maybe people, should be focused more on reference and creating their own references rather than pretending they're not using reference. Start creating your own and making it a part of your actual artistic process, that the reference part, the creation of and forming your reference is part of your overall process, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think if you can push your reference so far that people don't think it's reference anymore, then you're doing it right.
Yeah.
If you've taken reference photos and you've pushed that image to something so different than what your photo was that people can't even believe that came from a photo, then you're doing it right. The reason I think people should be more open about their reference material is because you're going to end up with a kid like me who thinks he's doing it all wrong because he can't draw strictly from imagination, and it could set him back for years. Where if you came out and taught somebody how to properly use reference instead of trying to hide behind ego and say you don't use reference, or create some kind of mythos around you that I don't need reference. And if you don't, amazing. But if you do and you're saying you don't, then you're doing a disservice to that kid who could probably learn how to use reference properly if you just were honest, than if you lied and said, no, you're doing it. Yeah, I don't need reference. I don't know why you do.
So hear it here first, right? Cecil Porter definitely uses reference.
Yes.